She made $28,000 a year as a lab tech, and within 5 years she quit her job for good after an $85,000 mortgage started paying for itself. Here's the part people miss. A lender denied her first. Bad debt, credit cards, a car note got her rejected. So she flipped it. She fixed her debt, took on the right kind, and got a stranger to pay it off for her every single month. Any income, any starting point, the math still works the same. I'm going to break down the exact numbers, what she owed, what she borrowed, what her mortgage cost, and what her tenant paid her, because the order she did this in is the part that actually makes it work. Skip a step, and it falls apart. Here's exactly where it started, with a lender telling her no. Her name is Deandra McDonald. Fresh out of college, she landed her first job as a lab technician, $28,000 a year. And like a lot of us, she had this idea in her head about what came next. In her own words, "Oh, just go buy a house, like how hard could it be?" That was it. That was the whole plan. She was college educated, she had a steady paycheck. In her mind, that's the formula. Degree plus job equals approved. She wasn't picturing a starter townhouse either. She was picturing something nice, a beautiful place, the kind of first home you see in a magazine. And honestly, that's what most of us think too. We think a job and a decent income is the ticket. We think the system rewards effort in a straight line. Work hard, get approved, move in. But here's the thing about that belief. It's not just wrong, it's the exact belief that was about to blow up in her face. Because when she actually walked into that lender's office expecting a yes, she didn't just get a no, she got told, flat out, she didn't qualify for anything. And the reason why is where this story actually starts. Here's her financial profile the day she got denied. $28,000 a year, student loans, credit card debt, a car note, a credit score sitting in the low 600s, and no real savings. She was struggling just to cover rent, gas, and her car payment every month. The lender didn't deny her because she made too little. She got denied because of her debt-to-income ratio. How much of her income was already spoken for before a mortgage payment even entered the picture. And here's where it gets uncomfortable because Deandra doesn't blame the system for this part. She owns it. Listen to how she breaks down her own mistakes. You did not need this apartment, this big old 2-bedroom that you were going to fill with all of these things. You maybe didn't need to adopt this animal that you can't really afford. You didn't need this particular car. She even goes after the small stuff. I love the jokes about the $4.99, the $6.99. What am I paying for? All of that had to go. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. Not the big, dramatic financial disaster, but 100 small yeses that quietly build a wall between you and the thing you actually want. A bigger apartment than you need. A pet you can't afford. A car note that eats your paycheck before it even lands. None of it feels reckless in the moment. It just feels like living. But add it all up, and it's exactly what stood between a $28,000 a year lab tech and an $85,000 house. So, what did she actually do about it? Because this is the part where most people either give up completely or accidentally make it worse. Deandra didn't get angry. She didn't wait for a better job or a raise. She got to work. Literally. On top of her lab tech job, she picked up bartending, then lifeguarding, then teaching swim lessons. 4 jobs, 1 goal. For the next 18 months, she cut everything that wasn't essential. Internet, cable, all of it, gone. Every extra dollar went to 2 things: paying down that credit card debt and rebuilding her debt-to-income ratio from the ground up. At the end of those 18 months, she had roughly $3,000 to $3,500 saved, and her debt cleaned up enough that a lender finally said yes, approving her for an $85,000 loan. She bought a 2-bedroom townhouse. Her mortgage payment? $535 a month. And here's the move that changed everything. She rented out that 2nd bedroom to a friend for $600 a month. Do the math with me. $600 in rent, $535 mortgage. That's not just covering her housing cost, that's her entire mortgage paid with extra left over, and her own personal housing expense dropped from around $800 to $900 a month in rent to 0. That's the moment the math flipped in her favor for the first time in her adult life. From there, she didn't stop. She bought a 2nd property, a condo, renovated it, and ran it as a short-term rental. And when it was time to scale into bigger deals, like a motel-style commercial property, She didn't take out a HELOC or refinance anything. She sold that condo outright and used the profit as her 20% down payment on the next deal. Meanwhile, her income situation had changed too. She left the lab tech job and became a teacher, which bumped her salary up to $48,000 a year. That salary became her fallback, while her rental income kept growing in the background. By February 2020, her real estate portfolio was generating around $50,000 a year, more than her $48,000 teaching salary. That was the number. That was the permission slip she'd been waiting for. She handed in her resignation that month, finished out the school year through June out of respect for her students, and then walked away from her W-2 completely. For good. From a $28,000 lab tech job, to being denied a mortgage, to a stranger's rent check covering her housing completely, to walking away from a steady paycheck because her tenants were now out-earning her salary. But if you take away just one lesson from all of this, one rule that made every single piece of it actually work, it's this next part. And it's the part most people skip completely. Deandra never once looked at investment property listings while she was still fixing her credit and paying down debt. Not one. She didn't window shop deals she wasn't qualified for yet. She didn't get distracted by the exciting part while she was still stuck in the boring part. Call it the phase-appropriate focus rule. Master the phase you're actually in, before you let yourself get distracted by the phase you want to be in. Most people do the opposite. They dream about the rental portfolio while they're still carrying $5,000 in credit card debt. They scroll property listings on a phone with 3 overdue bills. They want the ending without doing the unglamorous middle. The 18 months of extra jobs, cut expenses, and boring disciplined debt paydown. Deandra's version of that middle wasn't glamorous either. She's talked about waking up at 5 a.m. to clean out rental units, living with roommates well into her 20s, dealing with broken toilets herself instead of calling someone. That's the version of her that made the rest of this possible. And it's the version she says she still thinks about now, on purpose, whenever she's tempted to chase more, faster. Because here's her other rule, and it might be the more important one: define what enough looks like before growth turns into greed that puts other people's housing at risk. She said outright she doesn't chase unlimited growth, she has a number. And she stops there so she never gets so hungry for the next deal that she risks the stability of the tenants already depending on her. $28,000 a year, denied for a mortgage, told no by a lender who looked at her debt and said she wasn't ready. 18 months of extra jobs and cut expenses later, she was. One tenant's rent check took her mortgage from a burden to a non-issue. And 5 years after that first no, she walked away from her job for good. Not because she got lucky, because she mastered one phase completely before she ever let herself think about the next one. If you're standing where she was standing, denied, discouraged, staring at debt that feels bigger than your income, this is your reminder. Fix the phase you're in. The rest of the math only works after that.